Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us today. Our Corinne True Baha'i Center, our Corinne True Center for Baha'i History Book Club has over 250 members from many countries, and we're just so pleased that so many of you have joined us. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan, to talk about your books in the Changemaker series. We'll start with a prayer and then we'll continue. And Karen has very kindly agreed to say a prayer with us.
O my God, glory be unto thee, for that thou hast confirmed me to the confession of thy oneness, attracted me unto the word of thy singleness, enkindled me by the fire of thy love, and occupied me with thy mention and the service of thy friends and maidservants. O Lord, help me to be meek and lowly, and strengthen me in severing myself from all things, and in holding to the hem of the garment of thy glory, so that my heart may be filled with thy love, and leave no space for the love of the world and attachment to its qualities. O God, sanctify me from all else save thee. Purge me from the dross of sins and transgressions, and cause me to possess a spiritual heart and conscience. Verily thou art merciful, and verily thou art the most generous, whose help is sought by all men.
Thank you so much, Karen. And Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. Such a special treat. So just to refresh our memories, this week we were reading these 6 Changemaker books and about Robert Abbott, Dizzy Gillespie, Hazel Scott. All these 3 are by Susan. Richard St. Barb Baker, Patricia Locke, and Elsie Austin. And I know Juliet Gensko is here, who knows a lot about Elsie Austin as well, so we'll have such a great discussion. Susan, I remember you singing at the Baha'i World Congress, that thrilling "Oh Baha'u'llah" that just gave all of us goosebumps. It was so incredible. And I know you've done so many wonderful things since then, including being an editor of Brilliant Star, which has won so many awards. So we're just thrilled to have you with us to talk about this. So let me start with a few questions, and then we'll very quickly open it up to everyone else who will want to speak with you as well. So first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a Baha'i author?
Whoa, I didn't expect that question, Jizo. Um, let's see. I became a well, really, the history of this that first book is how I became a Baha'i author, other than working for Brilliant Star, which, writing articles, little articles is a little different from writing a book. So I certainly didn't consider myself to be an author with a capital A when I was working on the magazine. But when I retired, a friend of mine, many of you may know Bonnie Taylor, who compiled books on especially race unity. Pupil of the Eye is one of her books. She lived in the Chicago area and happened to go to a talk by Robert Abbott's great grandniece about her great granduncle. And she was deploring the fact that Robert Abbott had started a parade for kids in Chicago, um, the Bud Billiken Parade, which was sort of the mascot of the Chicago Defender, which was the newspaper that he began and published for many years. Um, she was sad that the kids who go to that parade knew nothing about Robert Abbott himself. So she kind of put out the call, will somebody please write a biography for children? And Bonnie heard that and she started to bug me and say, Susan, you can do this. And I'm thinking, but a book is bigger than a small biography and brilliant star. But anyway, so I started to research his life. Was very inspired. What a wonderful man. And actually took a trip to the island off Georgia where he was born, near Savannah, and just became so inspired that decided I'd give it a try. So I did write a manuscript and sent it in to the publishing trust. Well, it seemed to hit a niche because there were no books really for that age group, middle, meaning late elementary, middle school, and um, and the publishers were intrigued by the idea of writing books about Baha'is who made a change in culture in the world, so that a librarian might look up Izzy Gillespie and say, "Oh, here's a book we could put on our shelves." Whereas if we stuck to all the Baha'i heroes and heroines, um, people, librarians might not consider or even look for those people to put on their shelves. So this Changemaker series began, and hopefully kids, will read about these wonderful people and find out about their not only their cultural path, but also their religious spiritual path.
And then how did you select to write about Dizzy Gillespie and Hazel Scott? How did those books, what
Well,
inspired you to write those two?
we had a meeting and just started making a list of all the people who have touched on many, many people in the United States and around the world. And interestingly enough, most of those people are African American.
Mm.
So we just started going down the list. Dizzy was next on my list, and then um, Nat Yogachandra's wife suggested Hazel Scott because she just seen a PBS program about her, what happened to Hazel Scott, or something like that. And there was so much material. These people have had biographies written about them, which for kids, you got to tell a story. You can't just do facts and expect people to get excited about the lives of their forebears. So that part was easy. It's nice to have someone who's already written a book that one can, and who's probably met the people they're talking about. So, make it a personal experience for kids.
And I'm guessing that your own musical background and your interest and knowledge and education and practice of music making probably made this more interesting for you, right? With the two musicians.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting how artists, tend to reach more people than people in other professions in general. Music is such an international language. Yeah, I think anybody who reads these biographies has musical taste, and whether they match the person that they're reading about or not, everyone can appreciate how important music is to us.
I think so. How did you do the research for the book? You mentioned that some of them have had biographies written about them. But what is the research process? We always ask our authors about the research process because it can be so varied and so interesting. So curious to know what your own research process was.
Ah, well, we're lucky we live in the internet days where it's easy to find not only people's experience and stories, but also photos and even video. And you hear these people talk, and Dizzy Gillespie, is such a communicator. So Hazel too, and Robert. They all have been just. I don't know. It helps you jump into feeling like you might even know these people. I prayed a lot. Said, Dizzy, Robert, help me, because unless you could make these people real for children, they won't take it in. So yeah, and I did go to see, like I mentioned, Robert Abbott's beginnings, but I haven't spent much time in the Southeast. So that was a real eye opener. Not only the social, um, the social life he must have lived where he was, but also, the kudzu and the trees and the humidity, and somehow it helps when you read about someone to place them in the place where they grew up. So that was real helpful. Can't always do that, but I did that time.
By the time you wrote these books, you'd worked at Brilliant Star, so you're very familiar for writing for this age group. But how is it different to write for younger people than to write for adults?
That's a good question because I don't write for adults. Oh, well, that's not quite true. I did write, tiny books, um, which inspired by Martha Root's little books that she gave out around the world. And I did do my own take on a narrative of the Baha'i faith, a very, very short narrative, which is really meant for adults. But I think if you're telling stories, it's going to catch people's attention and help them feel a relationship with whatever subject or person you're writing about. So I love seeing books written for adults that do bring people in. You know, academics have a wonderful job to do, but they can't always be the storytellers that creative nonfiction people can pull in. So I like the head and the heart, getting them mixed together.
Very beautiful. Do you have a sense of how these books have been received by the schools, librarians, parents, children, youth?
Well, publishing companies don't often share statistics with authors, so I have no idea how well they do. But on a personal basis, I can say that the two libraries here in West Lafayette um, have these books on their shelves. And I think that's one thing we can do in outreach is to have a relationship with our libraries. And because these aren't Baha'i centric, you don't have to be a Baha'i to want to check it out. People are more open to putting them on the shelves. Also, and because Mr. Abbott's from Chicago or lived in Chicago, he's not from there. Um, every year the Baha'is have a booth during the Bud Billiken Parade, which was, of course, started by Mr. Abbott's newspaper. And beloved Steve Sarowitz has bought thousands of them to give away to the millions of kids and their families who come to the parade. So, there's all kinds of ways to teach. They're a little bit expensive for giving away, but when you have a way to really touch people and really the joy on the faces of people seeing a biography of Mr. Abbott, whether they knew about him a lot or not, was beautiful to see. One of my favorite experiences after having written the book was being at the parade, talking to people.
That's wonderful. And I know Shahla gave you two thumbs up, so I'm sure she's been to the parade. And I know many people want to chat with you, so let me open it up. If anyone has questions for you, I know people know you on this call, so and if any of you have experience with any of the six people, the six biographies we've read, I had met Dizzy Gillespie, and of course I knew Ms. Austen, so it was so fun to read their biographies in that way. So any questions? Nancy, go ahead. And then Shahla.
I just want to comment that I just loved these books. It's not just for junior youth, it might be for seniors who are losing mental capacity. And they're very readable, and they introduced me to people that I didn't know before, Baha'is that I didn't know. I've been a Baha'i over 50 years. And we didn't know these stories. So for both those reasons, they're just wonderful books. And I want to thank you for writing them in such an accessible way. And I know there's a lot of material for each one of them, and how you were able to distill it into you got the details, but without belaboring it. We can buzz through that in a short period of time and know these people. Thank you, Susan.
Oh, Nancy, you always have such lovely things to say. It's been a long time since we've been in the same room together.
I know. I remember going to Green Lake and you singing there, and we were singing together with when our kids were little, and now they're how old, in their 50s themselves, right? Uh, your early CDs was one of our favorites to sing along with.
Mm, yay.
Yay. So thank you for these little books.
Charlotte and then Bahia.
Yes, I ran into you, it seems like 200 years ago at Green.
It probably was.
And, it's wonderful we have books for children and we have books for adult. Junior youth is another patch of beings. And it's very important. I grew up with stories about the faith told to me by my grandmothers. They were big storytellers. I wish to God we had thought about it and written it down. But I grew up on those, and stories are actually the best way of getting into learning about history with children. And in a way that doesn't frighten them and yet makes them aware. So I am wondering if you travel with your books and you go to places to share the books. Here in Montreal, we have two young people who write book about children, for children, and then we have adult that write books. And in the summer months, once a month, we have a book presentation, and they come and talk about their books. And it's not just on the Baha'i faith, but on poetry and arts, on things that is good for young people as well as old people. So I'm wondering if you do that, ever go beyond Green Lakes. So, and I'm wondering, and Dizzy Gillespie used to come to Montreal to the jazz festival. And on Friday of the week he was here, he would go to Raymond Flournoy. Raymond has passed away. Raymond Flournoy was a Baha'i from Little Rock, Arkansas, who had become a Baha'i and came to Canada. And every Friday he had a fireside, and you could have as many as 50 people in his living room. And in the summer, he would have Sunday morning with watermelon and pancake.
Yeah.
So, Dizzy would blow the horn. And of course, it was wonderful meeting him, and his laughter could fill the whole neighborhood. So and I love that, to introduce these people to the youth, because they are into music, using the music into, arts, into institute process. And it's actually wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. What question I have is, what's your next book?
Actually, there's one in the pipeline on Robert Hayden, which, what a lovely story his life is. He went through the 60s and 70s when African Americans were justifiably standing up for the arts in their community and saying, look at us, we're poets, we're not just Black poets, but we are Black poets, and we want you to understand what our reality is. And dear Robert Hayden had become a Baha'i, and his outlook, of course, was that all poetry, all people are important and one. And so he got quite a bit of negative feedback from his own people about standing up for the oneness of mankind at a time when Black people really needed, and still do, that group identity, you know. So he had a tough life, not only from his art, but from the people around him. And he survived and thrived in spite of it. In fact, I just went to see Nikki Giovanni not too long ago. She's since passed away at Purdue. She had come to speak, and she was one of the people that really encouraged him not to be a universal poet, but to be a Black poet. I really wanted to ask her if she changed her mind, but I didn't get a chance.
I don't know if you, in the 60s, a whole group of draft dodgers came to Montreal. Majority African American, 9 of them settled down here. Fred Ward, was one of them. I don't know
Oh, nice.
any of them. If you go online, actually, you can see Raymond Flournoy singing
Uh-huh.
one of the tunes. It's absolutely, I play it every holy day. And it moved the children at that time in the 60s. They loved it. They would gather around him as he played the guitar and sang. So in the 60s, it was more like that. And then we went through a period, and now again, music is back into our lives. Thank God for the Institute process. So I'm looking forward to seeing your next book.
Oh, good. Me too.
We all are. Bahi'ijin.
Yes. Hi, Susan. It's
Hi.
so wonderful. I must be a junior youth then, because I loved your book.
Oh,
I started with it because I knew Dizzy Gillespie from the times, a couple of times he came to Chicago. I was not there yet when he came to the World Center. And I have a wonderful photo that someone had sent recently with him visiting the World Center. But what I wanted to, the other thing I wanted to mention is that he is so well thought of at the State Department. The Department of State has every year, since they started with him, a jazz day. And embassies around the world are asked to showcase this very unusual new form of music that was developed in the United States. So they own it, basically. And Dizzy was one of those that was there at the very beginning. And one thing I had heard when I was working there is that when he went to Cairo, they were not expecting anybody really to turn up on Jazz Day. And there was a big traffic jam. So many people came to hear him. So that's the story. But my question to you is, do you still sing? And
Oh, well, I sing to myself, but my brain has developed this thing where it can't hear keys anymore. So I can't sing in a choral situation because I don't hear the pitches right. It's so strange. I don't know why, but anyway. So I don't sing in the house of worship choir or any of those lovely gatherings of many people.
Susan was such a wonderful singer. And I still have the cassette tape of you singing, I Am But a Tiny Cell, single,
Oh,
alone and lowly. Remember that?
I do. I can't believe you still have a cassette.
I still have the little cassette. It's just such a precious song.
Oh,
And we all were so looking forward to Dizzy Gillespie performing at the World Congress. And unfortunately, of course, he couldn't come.
right.
Yeah.
Huh.
Thank you.
Oh, but yeah, so good to see you.
Any other questions for Susan? Fortunately, Juliet and Christine, fortunately, the video of you at the Baha'i World Congress is available. So That's really lovely to listen to. Juliet.
Susan, what a gift to see you.
Oh, Juliet, you lovely gathering.
I think you were born a storyteller, and that's one of the aspects of your books that comes through so beautifully. One of the things that I think we're all working with in writing and trying to convey these lives of precious people is the art of bringing something alive as a storyteller and yet being true to the person and to their life. And I just wonder if you have any experiences or comments about how you've developed that, because you've really brought it together seamlessly and beautifully.
Wow, those are beautiful adjectives. I like that. But you know, for me, when I'm writing something like that, I don't sleep because I feel like we writers and musicians, all of us get a connection with the divine, other worlds, other thinkers who help us in this process. I don't own any of this myself. You know, it's all, as far as I'm concerned, you know, inspiration from the other worlds. I mean, we do the research, but really to help make it come alive, I just try and listen to what I'm being told. Oh, when I was little, I read. Some of you are probably old enough to know that old series of biographies that had orange covers in libraries. I think Bob Smerrill was the publisher, and they did, you know, 150 biographies for kids of that age. And it was, I read every one of them. The one thing I can't do or don't do is make up the dialogue that they did in those old old days. You know, we don't know what George Washington Carver actually said because we don't have any taste, but they all rang true nevertheless. And I think it was that early love of biography that also helped me along as time went on.
Christine.
Hi, Susan. I've never met you before, but of course I've known your name. I knew that you were in music for ages, and then also all of your work with Brilliant Star. I followed you during all those years while I was receiving the Brilliant Star when my children were small, when we lived in South Africa, and always inspired by it. And I had, been asked at the time to work on a newsletter just for children while I was living in Johannesburg. And I was in my early 20s. It was a long time ago. But the point is that there's such a unique sort of method to take a story and create the interest for the different age groups. And I'm really, really keen on learning more about how to do that because I've been working on a biography of my great aunt, Leonora Armstrong, and know that as soon as I'm done with the adult version, there has to be something created for a younger audience. And so I need to study everything I can. I can't just rely on my sister, who's sort of like a natural at that, but I might end up pulling her in to work with me.
Oh yes. Oh, what a delight. And you met her when you
Several times, and I stayed with her in Brazil when I was a teenager.
Oh, wow.
I had that opportunity to really get to know her and to see some of those very aspects of her personality that made her a real person. Definitely. And I know that once my sister is able to read some more of the details of the book, because she hasn't heard all the different research things that I've discovered over the years, I have a feeling she'll be able to help me pull out the things that are appealing to young people and present them that way. Because I tend to be more of a, sort of scholarly, boring person. I'm not really great at memorizing details. So like I have collated everything and presented it nicely, but like off the cuff, it's harder. Except possibly, like you said, a personal experience, maybe when I was staying with her. A lot of stories like that, yeah.
Oh, hope you had more to eat than bananas. I know that she was quite not very.
How did you know that already?
What?
How did you know about that already?
Actually, I've written a short biography for for Brilliant Star.
Oh, that's right. I did read that one. That's right. Yes, when I was staying with her and she was already 80 something, she would make a little pot of beans for the week, and it would be on the back of the stove, and she would just sort of nibble out of the pot for her meals. She never went to any length to do anything about meals. She was so frugal. I mean, that is like the bottom line for her own care. She was very frugal. I remember one of our trips from the States, my mom packed a package of raisins and packages of chocolate. And
Oh,
she was just like, oh my gosh, these were just like precious gifts that we brought to her, you know?
I think I read about that. Raisins and chocolate. Good job. She remembered. Oh, lovely.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
pleasure.
the opportunity to meet you.
Shall we take a moment to talk about the other books as well? Juliet, I don't know if you had a chance to read the book about Elsie Austin, Attorney for Racial Justice. I'm just curious if you happen to have read it, because we had said, we can read any of these books, so not everyone's read all the books, but if you happen to have read it and if you have any thoughts about it.
Yes, well, I guess in terms of all of our thinking about documenting lives and writing about such lives, one of the Gwendolyn Eder Lewis has done such a service by recognizing the historic nature of people's service and doing extensive interviews of them. So she had a tremendous amount of material that was directly from these interviews. And I have found in my own research on her life, these interviews have been invaluable. So I know that she was writing that for the junior youth age group, and I think she was writing it with a particular aspect of her life in mind, of being an advocate for racial justice and for social justice. But her own research has done so much.
Wonderful. You mentioned her interviews. I'll get to you, Shala, in just a second, but you mentioned her interviews. I just wanted to let you know, and of course, when the information comes out, I'll definitely share it because I think this is a very unique group that will be interested. The Corinne True Center is putting together a 2-hour workshop on how to do oral history, because so many of us in the book club are also authors. And so many of us care about the history in our communities and our families. So this is a really nice session that they're putting together. There are about 6 or 7 university professors. I think Mike is one of them, and Mike is online. And I know Mike is one of them, and he's online. So maybe he can share a little bit with us. But then it's just going to be so interesting and so much for us to learn. Mike, do you want to come in for a second to talk about the oral history work? I'll give him a chance. Shahla, let's go on to you.
Well, and I want to go back to junior youth and books for them. I often pick a section of a book and a story from a book and share it with the junior youth. But it would be really nice if the specific aspect of these people, like Leonora, like Iran June, She wrote a book about their lives. But the story about the snake in the roof, I often share that with my junior youth. It's one of the favorite stories that junior youth just go berserk about it. It would be, I mean, I knew your mom. Actually, my mom and my aunt, Khalejun, made her wedding dress. So I was at their wedding. So, and Iran June was to me was the most beautiful bride in the world. And then she took off. And I love her book, but I'm wondering, like, people, like if they could write books that is more like writings of Abdul Baha, which is more readable to the younger generation. And so I'm sort of putting this out to a lot of you, because we often write for adults and intellectuals, which is wonderful. I think that should be there. And also to little kids. But I think that age, if they get attracted to the sacrifices and the lifestyle these people chose to live. And you're talking about frugality of Leonardo. I have a cousin who was born in Brazil named after her. I think half a dozen or most of the girls born in Brazil were named after her. So, and I'm wondering if that would be something that people would take on and cooperate. I mean, some people have a story and may not be able to kind of really fully put it into that form. And someone like Suzanne could move in and help them to develop it into that language. And we are doing these things with ABS really to further develop something that would become foundation of the further study in the community. So that's my suggestion.
That's a wonderful suggestion. And inshallah, I've seen photographs of my mother's wedding dress, and it's absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much to your mother and your aunt for designing it and for creating it. It's just
So that I was there as she would come to try it on.
oh, so
I
lovely.
thought, oh God, it was wonderful times.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
And of course, I sat on Mr. Futan's lap as a child. We used to line up to go and sit on his lap when we were children. So I grew up with them. So
wonderful. Such happy, happy memories. Thank you. Thank you. Karen. Karen, we can't hear you.
There we are, still technically challenged. Yeah, I just wanted to say something about Elsie Austin, because just recently we've moved to Cincinnati, actually from Alabama and before then in Maryland. But yeah, the fact that she was born in Tuskegee and then came to Cincinnati was quite fascinating. And recently I became treasurer of the assembly, and I had to become signatory on the bank account, and the bank manager sort of looked at the name and he said, "Is that really the name of your organization?" And it was nothing like it. It talked about a Baha'i fund rather than Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Cincinnati, Ohio. So he kind of laughed and he said, no, he said, we need to make it the same as your incorporated name. And so he looked back on the various documents, the state documents and the original incorporation. And there was Elsie Austin's name back in 1938. So that was just shortly after she became a Baha'i, I guess. But that was really nice. And he was very impressed that the Baha'is had been in Cincinnati since then. So it opened up some discussions about the faith and so on. And yeah, the other thing, for reading the book, I hadn't realized, but Elsie Austin, she had attended Walnut Hills High School in Cincinnati. And that's actually the school that my 3 grandchildren who are in Cincinnati, they all attend that school. And my granddaughter was just graduating as a senior a week ago. And so to know that connection with them. So I hadn't known, and I asked them, and they said, "Oh yes, we knew that Elsie Austin had attended the school. Her name is on the corridors and pictures of her, and apparently she's she's very well known within the Walnut Hills family." And Gwenetta Lewis, she was actually at a fireside last night that I was at, and I was sort of thanking her for the book, and it is wonderful the opportunities that she's had to talk about Elsie Austin's contributions, and also to talk about the faith locally. She has a lot of connections, and there were a large group of young people who came to it was one of the courthouses, and she was able to speak to them about Elsie Austin, and that's so it's neat. And my husband, his family had pioneered to Kenya as one of the locations that they had pioneered to, as well as Gambia and Morocco. And in Kenya, Elsie Austin was there at the time that my husband was there. And so the fact that she was this American diplomat, everybody was so impressed by her. I mean, she was just wonderful in her service. And later on in life, I don't know, in the Washington, D.C. community, she was living in Silver Spring with Lucille Webster, and they would come to meetings together, but they were so humble. They would sit in the back of the room and they wouldn't really say anything. I mean, their presence was wonderful, and you felt the spirit that emanated from their devotion to the cause. But they wouldn't really speak very much. And I wish that I had known more at the time that they were alive to be able to talk to them. But thanks to the book, we are able to sort of see some glimpses into their amazing lives and such dedication. I mean, it's wonderful to have that, and very inspiring for young people. So thank you.
Wonderful. Christine, and then Susan.
May I just tell a sweet story about Elsie Austin? When the National Spiritual Assembly of the Bahamas was being elected for the very first time, 1978, my parents had been pioneers there for about 9 years, and then we had taken about a year and lived in South America, and we came back to the Bahamas specifically for helping to prepare for the National Convention that year. And somebody I know here was there. And but I was about 19, and our family got there a little early because we were going to be helping with setting it up and planning, etc. And we took a little flat in a building on the coast of in Nassau and near where we'd used to live, but it was sort of a block of them. And there was one next door where also helping to set up the National Convention were Dr. Austin and Marguerite Sears. So they had been asked, of course, specifically probably by the NSA of the United States to be there to help, and had been there a couple months already. And they were sharing this little flat. Well, the flats had like windows at the back, and their kitchen window was also like near our kitchen window. And when the windows were open, my little sister and I could hear the conversations going on in there. And so we would be in there doing something, and all of a sudden we would hear this, "Oh, did you remember? Ha 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 ha." And so it was really wonderful because, when you're young, you look at adults that are in positions like that of service and you think, "Oh my gosh," right? But here we were intimately hearing these conversations that made them real for us. And it just expanded, I think, my experience of them, and also realizing that they were like my sister and I, they were having fun doing this together. And it was just really special. I felt very special. I mean, there were many, many amazing things during that period, but that was just one of the most special things I remember about Dr. Austin.
Wonderful. Anne has sent a question about Auntie Claire. Who is Auntie Claire?
Oh my God.
What have I missed?
She is the one that started the school next to the temple in Kampala, Uganda. Her story is heaven's story. Oh, I almost agreed to go and become the principal of that school some years ago, but my husband got Parkinson's, so we didn't make it.
Right.
And Auntie Claire sat on the slope of the mountain where the temple is built and taught the children surrounding the mountain songs and prayers. And that's why she survived the revolution in Uganda. Idi Amin protected her. She was the only foreigner Idi Amin kept and took care of her and her school. She built a school. She was actually German who went to Britain to work, become a children's caregiver. And the war happened. She couldn't go back. She became a British and became a Baha'i and pioneer to Uganda with the early Baha'is. And then this school was beautiful. When she died, she was very poor. But when she died, she left this absolutely fabulous school to the NSA and 100,000 pounds in the bank to the NSA. She is absolutely heaven. Oh my gosh. I absolutely adore her.
How
If I can-
wonderful to hear that. So, Anne, it looks like you'll have to write the book yourself, I think.
Well, actually, Auntie Claire is the first name of one of the people who's named after Auntie Claire, is living in Columbus, Ohio right now. And she has many stories about being called Auntie Claire and all the challenges she faced with that. But there's a lot of wonderful stories. I could get started, but I think we'll have to give that to the Auntie Claire. I'll start working with her. I saw her recently, and I'm sure she'd be thrilled to be involved in that. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Susan and then Nancy.
And I think you should get going on that right now. And Christine, your enthusiasm telling that story, I have no doubt, excuse me, that you'll be able to tell the Honora story very well. I did want to share one thing. When I was working on the Come and Sing album back in 1980, I audaciously wrote to Four Hands of the Cause and asked for stories, because we were going to insert stories between the songs about Abdu'l-Baha. And Mr. Furton wrote back and said, the fairy tales are excellent source of stories for children because they teach them empathy, which is what, biography can do too. So I just thought I'd share that the classic fairy tales can also develop attributes in children that they need. And I have to go, so goodbye.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have about
Susan.
10 minutes, but it was such a joy to have you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Alapa.
So wonderful to see her.
Wow.
Wow. Well, overall, I'm impressed once more at how important the writing of the history is for all of us. And it just seems like it's oozing up now, this new layer of more recent stories. But also The Guardian had requested in his time to the Persian Baha'is to write all the, you know, the history, the stories. And I have another reason for suggesting that it's very important. I started to write my own memoirs and I haven't gotten too far, but I thought, worst case scenario, I'll box up all the papers I have and send them off to the archives before I die. And, but reason being that in my family, although I've been a Baha'i over 50 years, most of them have either turned away or tried to obstruct it or shunned me because of being a Baha'i. The point where I thought, you know, will my grandchildren even know? They're making sure they don't know anything about Baha'i, you know, and opposing Baha'i. But I thought, you know, God has his way. If he wants them to know about it, they'll find out. And these stories that you already shared tell me, you know, that you can't ultimately repress the stories. Even some of these that we're writing biographies about, they've been opposed. They've been trying to bury their story, and it can't happen. So I take away and I trust from what you're doing that the stories will come out, including my own. I'm the first and now the only Baha'i in my family, and they don't like it that I'm a Baha'i, but too bad. Yeah, thank you. Keep writing. What people tell me, but I'm telling you too. Keep writing.
Can
Juliet?
I ask Karen if she lived in Huntsville? Did your husband write the companion to the study of the tablet of Epistle to the Son of the Wolf?
Yes, he did.
I'm still waiting for a copy of it.
Oh.
We studied the book. So, it's
What?
wonderful.
But did my husband say he would send a copy to you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You'll need to send me your.
Because I also live in Birmingham, Alabama, and I think your son has married one of my beautiful girls. I have 200 grandchildren in Alabama. And so they should write their story. That family should write some stories for children.
Yeah, no, it's very, very precious. But please do send me your address and I'll make sure you get a copy.
Wonderful. Juliet, you were going to come in.
I just wanted to suggest, Kisu, in planning for the program about interviewing oral history, which seems so important for us all to learn from, if there could be considered a particular session for junior youth and youth, because we're trying to engage them in history, but that's not something that's coming across too strongly in the program. And I think it could be a source of wonderful opportunities for home visits, for learning about archives, for learning the value of different ages in the community. And it's such a time when people are concentrating on the history of the 10-year plan and what that was about. So I think it could contribute to the enthusiasm that they have in understanding the 9-year plan.
So are you suggesting that the workshop be oriented to an audience of youth and junior youth?
I'm wondering if it might be effective to have two, not that one had to go to one or the other, but I think if groups of youth or groups of junior youth could join, I just feel it's a particular audience.
Yes,
And
yes.
just to consider it, not necessarily right away, but at some point.
No, it's a lovely idea. And Mike and I will definitely take that back to to the group that's putting together the session. I think, you know, once we have we have fantastic materials already from the various professors who do this for, you know, their jobs. Mike is one of them. His audio isn't working, so I can say anything I want. So, but definitely we'll take it back and see how that information can be modified then for an audience of youth and junior youth. One of the reasons, you've just reminded me that one of the reasons we decided to read these books is because we were concerned about what material was available for the youth in some of our previous discussions. And we really wanted to make sure that the youth were learning about Baha'i history and learning about the Baha'i, you know, heroes and heroines that had gone before. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to read these Changemaker books. So definitely, I think reaching the youth and junior youth is important and a key effort. Thank you for that suggestion. So we have 4 minutes left. Any other questions or comments? Then let me tell you about the book for next time. We're going to read the biography of General Alloy, Hand of the Cause. And I know some of us know him, have met him, and I think it's just going to be really great. His 2 daughters live very close by in the neighboring community. So I've already reached out to his 2 granddaughters, I should say, sorry. So I've already reached out to them to see if they can possibly join us. And otherwise, even if they don't, it's going to be a really great session. So thank you all so much. Before I say goodbye, are any of you planning to come to the Greenacre Corinne True Center conference this next weekend? No?
I wish.
I wish
Yes,
to.
Juliet is presenting, so of course I look
Uh,
forward to seeing you there.
We used to go every summer, but now with the kids grown up and away.
Well, I think some of the sessions will be taped, so I'll definitely make sure to circulate that among all of us because
Thank
they're
you.
going to be interesting topics. So we'll see what we can do. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Lovely to see you and see you next month. Bye.
Aloha. Bye-bye.